This is the SIG
This
network
meeting
meeting
is
for
being recorded.
June 23rd, 2023. Two? Yeah, two. Got 23 on my mind though. Let's start it off with some triage. We've got a 1 in the air from Tim. There we go.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute while I was trying to find the right window to share at the same time. Again, appreciate everybody who went through yesterday and this morning. I flagged a few for looking at today. If we have a few minutes, I'd also love to run through the open KEP issues. And I know we have a rather long agenda today. If we have time, I'd also love to look at the KEP dashboard, because today is KEP freeze. So last chance for people to scream, oh my God, you forgot my PR or something, if we get there. So let's run through triage. There's an issue filed yesterday talking about topology hints and consideration of taints. And they lay out a fairly complicated situation where they expected one set of behaviors and they got a different set of behaviors. And if I understand it correctly, it comes down to services don't know anything about taints. We use the number of cores available in a topology region to decide whether or not to do topology hints based on whether like all the clients in one region would swamp all the servers in that region. Like if it's massively imbalanced, then we just try not to do topology. And this person seems to be saying, well, but all my clients are going to come from this set of nodes that are tainted this particular way, so you should only consider those in the service. And the question then is, like, are we going to consider taints in services? My instinct is no, but I think it's an opportunity to look at our heuristics. So Rob, I don't know if you're here, but oh, you're already assigned. Cool. I don't know what we want to do with this. I think it's a case of thinking about it and seeing if there's something we can do to have this user have a better experience, but I'm not sure as presented that it's solvable the way they want it to be solved.
My main concern is how to scale that. I mean, everything that we want to do topology is we need to store it. So how?
Right. Yes, we end up keeping more metadata about, like, suppose, for example, we put a only consider nodes with taints equals, or I guess a tolerations on the service, basically.
Yeah, but I mean, that's exactly the thing is, once we start, where do we stop?
Right. Yep.
Because we are writing our scheduling logic for.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the same problem that the scheduling has, right?
Right. So we knew when we started using CPU as a proxy for this heuristic that it was imperfect. So like maybe we can, through conversation with this particular user, think about how we could refine that heuristic into something that works for him a little bit better, more automatically, without requiring more configuration. So I thought it was an interesting topic worth bringing up today. Next, oh, Casey's already on it.
Yeah, you can just leave that with me.
Is it assigned to you?
Yep.
Yep. Cool. Close. This one is, they're reporting as an issue the idea that rapidly changing pod readiness can cause a denial of service on all the other nodes. And I explained a little bit here that that's sort of the design. I mean, they recognized it. Oh, there's an update. One thing I noticed as I was looking at this, we have this bounded frequency runner for IP tables sync. As far as I can tell, we're setting the default to like 1 second, which is probably not cool. We should probably set it to something on the order of like 5 or 10. It looks like in IPVS it's set to a higher default. but IPVS doesn't use IP tables for most of the data plane, right? So that's something that we could look at.
So one problem with that, though, is that means that it takes longer when a pod goes down to stop using it as an endpoint.
That's right. That's right.
So
on average, it'll take half that period, right? So
yeah, so I think people with small clusters really like having the small min sync period. The real key was to not have min sync period be 0, because it used to be that if you had 1,000 updates, we would do 1,000 IP table restores.
Right. And maybe the answer here is actually to make that more dynamic. Like if the last update was very large, we increase the time or something. Like what we want to avoid is that we're continuously running IP tables restore. As soon as one finishes, we start the next one, right? Because they, as they get bigger, they take longer, and then so there's an opportunity again here for maybe we can do better. I have to read the updated comment. Yeah, or I suggested maybe we have a rate limit by namespace. I don't really like that, but something to think about. I feel like I can triage this one as accepted. Like it is an issue. It's just not necessarily one we're going to fix, right?
So I have a PR to greatly minimize our IP tables restores. I just pasted it. It's probably on your queue somewhere. So.
Probably. To be fair, the only thing I've looked at for the last 2 weeks is KEPs. Anything that was not in the enhancements repo did not get much attention from me at all. Okay.
And to be fair, I'm kind of spamming you with PRs.
Hey, I'm totally cool with that. Okay, so we'll leave this one as accepted. I'll circle back and read the update and look at your PR or your PRs once we get through KEP freeze. This one is a user using the older Echo server. I didn't reload any of these this morning, sorry. Rather than using AGN host. I'm not sure if we just close this, like, yeah, don't use Echo server anymore.
The problem is that the ingress tests are hard-coded, the manifest and all the things. And I think that Nginx tests are no longer running. The only ones are the GCE ingress tests running. And they have all the manifests with the images hard-coded.
But should we just go through and update those to use AGN host?
Last time I touched that, I spent 1 week with the mess. I mean, if somebody has patience, I can guide them through, but I cannot commit to clean those tests.
Antonio, I'm very proud of you.
No, but I seriously, that's a lot of code that I mean, it's hard to navigate and it's tedious. It's not complex, but it's tedious. It's a good first issue for somebody that wants to get involved. And I can spend time explaining it.
I also don't understand why it doesn't work on ARch64 anymore.
That's the cross-building stuff. I think that Ricardo can give you some talk about that.
What? OpenRest, BuildX, all of those things?
No, to cross-compile things.
I don't wanna talk about that either. Too many distroless stuff, not compiling.
Is that what it is? It's just we can't make it compile for the base image doesn't support ARch64?
It seems to be something really old on that. I can take a look into that, but I don't think it's like too much priority anyway. But if you want to assign it to me, like it's a really old Nginx image, and if we are not using Echo server anymore, I can just go ahead and say, hey, don't use it.
Yeah,
well,
I
mean,
go ahead, Anton.
Yeah, the thing is, the only thing why we use Echo server is because we have this very old ingress GC tests in the E2E framework.
Yeah.
So the thing is, we need to migrate those tests.
Well, but those tests are going to run on x86, right? So they're not going to fail.
Yeah.
So like maybe it's sufficient to tell this user, you should use AGN host, and we know we have to go fix these older tests, but they only run on x86, so it's okay.
I don't know. I mean, this is a recurrent topic with the architect.
Okay, Antonio, if you've got context,
Yeah,
can
I
you,
will.
like,
I
follow
will
up?
add a comment. Assign to
It-
me, and I will.
Yeah.
follow.
And if you want me to do something, Antonio, just ping me on Slack. We can just.
Something. I think
can
that you,
do that.
you have
Just
it
do
enough
something,
with
Ricardo.
the.
I can do something.
I don't know what it is. Just do something. I don't care. Okay.
/ close.
For what it's worth, we've hit the same problem. We were using the Echo server somewhere, and there's a new version of it that does work on ARM64. If someone can just drop the link to this issue in the notes, I can follow up on that.
Well, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, that will be great. That solves everything.
Okay. This issue I filed as I was reviewing a KEP, realized the way we do the something class defaults, we could handle it better. This was in the context of storage class, but I filed the issue so that we can come back and look at it. Specifically, I think ingress class could follow the same pattern. If somebody wants to look at it, I tagged it good first issue. Maybe we want to fork off a separate one for ingress class. And runtime class. I think those are the only three: storage, ingress, and runtime. So I thought it was worth bringing up here for context. If anybody wants to jump on an issue, there's already a PR posted, I think. Yeah, there's already a PR posted against storage, so we could even follow the same pattern and just make sure that it works the way we think it should work.
And I asked a question here because you mentioned just to pick one, but I think, should you guarantee that you always pick the same in all the API servers?
No,
Yes.
I think
No.
like my feeling here is if you're in the middle of this transition, like the use case here is I used to have storage class A as the default, and I want storage class B to be the default. So I put the default label on B and I take it off from A. And in that interstitial period, you could be on either one. Like if somebody was creating an instance that happened to hit during that window, it might have won the race or it might have lost the race based on all sorts of non-deterministic factors. I don't think it's worth a lot of effort. Just pick one.
But that's the thing that I don't understand. You always end with only one default.
Yes.
So
well,
this two is
that's the
temporary.
goal. Well, I mean, that's the goal, right? And Jan pointed that out at the bottom. Like maybe we should actually throw a metric or something that says, hey, you have two defaults, so that people could alert on it, because it's not really a normal situation. But is it really a bad situation? Is it something we're gonna like prevent? I don't think so. I think it's just you've sort of misconfigured the system and it's doing something reasonable. Right now it does something I think unreasonable, which is you just can't create any storage volume claims, right? Or you can't create any ingresses while there are two defaults. And I feel like that's pretty hostile. You should just pick one.
Yeah, but my question is what guarantees that you always come back to having only one?
You don't.
The user.
Yeah, this is a user operation. We don't have an atomic transaction sort of thing that guarantees that as a transition, right? I once upon a time theorized that our API server should have symlinks. So I could have literally a class called default, and it would symlink point, and then you could make an atomic flip, right? And Daniel Smith made the same face that Bridget just did.
It's a trap. Admiral Akbar.
So if we're treating this as an annotation, like having two means, I don't know, pick one. I feel like the simplest answer here is acceptable. Like why make it more complicated?
Yeah, but pick the same one.
I mean, we could, like if the heuristic is pick the one that was changed most recently, pick the one with a higher resource version. But even resource versions, you're not really supposed to compare, right? It's sort of an opaque cookie.
Yeah, just sort it somewhere. Okay, this
right.
I got it. Now,
Sort it based on what? I mean, creation time, I guess, is like as good a proxy as anything. Literally, it doesn't matter, right? Anything random is acceptable, so anything better than random is also acceptable.
Okay.
I mean, for fun, we should just literally pick a random number and just pick one, and don't
But you
configure
have
it this way.
you have a name.
Sure, you could sort lexicographically, you could sort by creation time, you could sort by, I don't think we track generation for these classes, but we could. How do we know what the user really intended? We don't have a timestamp of when the annotation was set. So like, that's less obvious.
So I think
Right.
this has got to be our last issue for
Oh,
triage
okay.
because we're
running along.
Good.
Okay.
Getting
So
low on
anybody who
time.
wants to look at this, feel free to look at it. It seems like a fun way to get some PR points. The other ones are all older ones here anyway, so we can go back and revisit them. There's only 3 of them. I will yield the floor, and if we have time at the end, I would love to run through the list of open KEP issues in enhancements that are tagged SIG network. There's only 23 of them.
Cool. Let's see how quick we can get through these. I think it was Bridget and James next.
Yes, James Sturdivant. I'm dropping a link in the chat, which is also in the doc. And James, do you want to kind of summarize what your question is, where the discussion is?
Yes, actually, so I got some answers this morning, but I wanted to verify that I understood the answers. Basically, it seems like there's some rules being written on the Linux nodes when the external IP, when there's a load balancer with local traffic only. They're being written on the Linux nodes, but they don't seem to be written on Windows nodes. The report of the issue is saying the traffic is going from the Windows node is going out to the load balancer and then being distributed again. And I think if I understand correctly, the traffic should, if it's coming from a node and going to the load balancer IP address, it should just get distributed to the nodes or the endpoints that are listed inside the service, even though it's a local only traffic policy. Am I making sense there?
Yeah, so we spent a good amount of time a couple months ago debating the semantics of internal versus external traffic, and is it really based on the client or is it based on the endpoint that you're talking to? And we arrived on a model of it's more based on the endpoint you're talking to, whether you're considered internal or external traffic. Dan Winship, stop me if I mischaracterize. I went and I pulled up the kube proxy code that we had negotiated at the end of all this, and it specifically has a path that says if you're accessing a load balancer IP from internal, from this node or from a pod on this node, then we just send you to the cluster endpoints because it emulates as if you had gone out to the load balancer and the load balancer had picked a healthy node and that node has endpoints. And so we do that on Linux because we know that some of the cloud providers create local IP assignments for the load balancer IPs. So if you don't do it in IP tables, it actually gets routed back to localhost anyway, and then it fails. Actually, it does worse than fail. It does bizarre things. My point here being, I don't think comparing literally Linux does this many routes and Windows does that many routes and they're not the same. Oh no, it's much more about the semantics. I don't know what semantics, what implementation Windows needs to achieve the semantics. It sounds like you're already getting the right semantics.
Okay, I think we are not getting the right semantics yet. So because if I'm understanding correctly, if you're on the node and you're sending to the load balancer, then it should just get sent to the endpoints directly and not go all the way back out to the load balancer.
It should pick a valid endpoint. It shouldn't fail just because this node doesn't have endpoints. Whether you actually send it up and out to the load balancer and then back down, or whether you internally emulate that is a decision that the Windows implementation can make.
Okay.
Dan, does that sound fair?
Yeah, it should behave as though you sent it out to the actual load balancer. whether you do or not is up to you.
Okay, and so it doesn't really affect, or like we don't need to necessarily, so this is behaving the way it is supposed to be behaving. If we wanted to, we could add another rule that would not go to the load balancer and distribute it to the endpoints if we wanted.
Right. At that point, it's an
Okay.
optimization.
Okay. And so the customer seems to think that they would like that optimization. Should we move forward with that, or is it?
I mean, we do it on Windows, on Linux. I mean, so I have no reason to tell you not to do it. Again, Linux, blah, blah, blah. Linux, we're jumping through hoops to make that happen, and we had to really arm wrestle over whether this was the right semantic or not. If it's doable and it's an optimization for the Windows path, I don't see why you wouldn't. If it's really, really complicated and you'd have to take unnatural actions to do it, then why bother?
Okay, cool.
But as the owner of the Windows proxy subsystem, totally your call.
Excellent. I will talk amongst the SIG Windows folks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bridget and Craig, I think you were next.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you for letting us kind of jump this one up. We wanted to make sure to talk about it. TLDR is in yesterday's SMI community call. We were talking about the intersection between and collaboration between and all of the congruence of Gateway API and SMI. And Craig, who has joined us here, had a wonderful idea, which is, hey, there is a structure for this, just like WG policy. This could be WG mesh under the SIG network. And I thought, Craig, you are right. We should go talk to SIG network about that. And Keith just joined, I see. And I think Mike is on as well. And I just dropped a link in the doc. We just started drafting, going through the template of what one is supposed to do to set up a working group. But just wanted to kind of run it by SIG network and see, does that sound relevant to people's interests? Craig, do you want to add any context or thoughts there?
Yeah, just for anyone who isn't familiar with the context from Bridget's doc already, the north-south use case is very well covered by the Gateway API. And now we wish to consider the east-west. And so there is obvious convergence with all the implementing vendors on Gateway API for north-south. And now we're looking to establish the same for east-west. And so the SMI project has had a number of their vendors look at the specifics of making that move. Istio has already got an implementation, but we're looking to bring that in line with whatever the community decides. And it feels like the SIG network would be the absolute best place to drive that forward.
What do you mean by east-west? The pod traffic?
Yes, so inter-service traffic between services inside the same cluster.
So, but it's not interpod, it's inter-services.
It could be either.
When
I mean,
Antonio, other than Kubernetes, when people say service, they mean abstract. A group of pods doing a thing together. And when we say service, we mean capital S, the API resource, which that's Istio maps the two things together kind of quietly without telling you.
So for us, for SIG network conventional meetings, this is internal traffic. Right.
Internal, but possibly between clusters, right?
Well,
yes. Sure. These are all the kind of things a working group could produce a document to explain to.
Well, that then is really nice. So you can at least educate me.
I have no objections to a working group, although I don't know that I have time to participate in it.
Well, you've got Craig and John and Louis and other folks from
and honestly,
the
I imagine
side of things.
I imagine that Rob and Bowie would also get involved on the gateway side. So.
Oh yeah. I mean, I assume so.
So
and then,
some of the specifics there look like they're weighing up. It's sort of an extension of the Gateway API, but it's that's why effectively we figured a working group might be the right way to do it, because it's sort of a time-bound thing, effectively to add more support to the Gateway API for a different use case. Once Gateway's gone beta for the ingress kind of use case, then hopefully there'll be a little bit more room on their side for considerations like this. And this community and group feels like the right kind of governance structure going forward for work that was previously done under the SMI banner as well.
Yeah, especially because there's things like policy that Gateway is just starting to jump into, and there's a lot of work already in all of the meshes where they've done something with it. So bringing that all together is the goal. Is there?
I'm happy to
Mike,
sponsor or endorse.
Okay, fantastic. Keith will get the PR in. Keith, Mike, is there anything else we need to add?
So I'm Jeff Apple. I haven't joined these meetings before, but I've been involved on the Gateway API work for the last year plus. And I'm curious, why would you propose a separate working group as opposed to just do this within the existing framework of the Gateway API group?
Yeah, absolutely. Just because there's a bunch of interests in the service mesh world that don't fit neatly inside Gateway as it stands right now. But working groups are a time-bound way to bring everything together.
Yeah, so if you want, you can think about this as a project as to how we get to that world. Like eventually this will just become another part of the Gateway API. And this is bringing together people who have the interest in solving this problem for their own implementations to figure out how best to do that. Once that's all completed, then it just becomes part of business as usual for Gateway API.
Which we might end up expanding the name of slightly if people are worried about the word gateway not having the right scope, but that's for the future.
That's why Keith took himself off video mute.
It sounds more like you're trying to hijack Gateway API than to help expand it, to be honest. Maybe it's, I'm not trying to be
Do you see it that
argumentative.
way, Craig? Oh no, it's fine. Do you see it that way, Craig? I kind of saw it as we're all trying to come together, but.
No, I mean, Jeff, I'd love if you'd elaborate on that.
Well, just the people have been working on the Gateway API for 3 years, I think now. There's this established set of parties that have driven that. I'm not saying that group is necessarily opposed to what you're proposing, but I think it would be appropriate to bring it to that group and say, we want to, we're interested in expanding it, and so we'd like to be part of this and join as regular participants of that process, as opposed to doing it kind of from the outside in a sense, and then coming with a kind of a fait accompli of here's how we think it should be changed.
So I think that feels reasonable to me. I would be in favor of trying to bring this to the Gateway API working group and get some kind of affirmative, not Gateway working group, the Gateway API, whatever it is, meeting, and get some kind of affirmative consent that the folks there are generally supportive of this idea before moving forward with the creation of a working group.
Yeah, just to be clear, I didn't interpret this as an attempt to disempower Gateway, more like a focus group. Like, hey, if we wanted to tackle this use case, what are the sorts of particular requirements? I'm not part of this discussion at all, so this is just how I interpreted this conversation. And ultimately, the folks who are building Gateway own Gateway, right? I'm not going to force anything on them, and neither would this working group.
Yeah.
So, bringing it to the group first makes sense. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Jeff, on behalf of that group, would it be distracting if all of a sudden a bunch of new people turned up and were talking about a different use case while you're trying to nail down the first one? From my perspective, it seems like simply saying, all right, we're going to take this group of existing people and put them on here. I would see that potentially as being a distraction if we tried to turn up to all the regular Gateway API meetings. And that's why I figured something next door to that was probably the right way to go.
I think what I would say is that it should be a discussion within that group to say, how do we want to, there's a group of people interested in extending it to these use cases. How do we want to handle that? Do we want to have kind of a subgroup that is focused on that and does that and kind of keeps us informed, or do we want to make it just a standard part of our work stream as we're going forward with this for, not basically just another aspect of it that we take it in the direction of. I mean, that would be my approach. Instead of deciding how you're going to do it first and then going to the group first and say, what makes the most sense for how we do this? And I mean, Shane, you've been involved in it a long time too. Your views may be different than mine.
Yeah, I wanted to hop in here and just say that none of this was ever meant to take any power away from Gateway API. To Craig's point, the reason that this started outside the Gateway API to begin with is because we didn't want to distract, especially with some of the great work that group is doing right now. We wanted to get people together who said, hey, couldn't this be used for this use case, and work alongside the Gateway API. And going back to Mike's point earlier, I'm 100% in favor of polling, asking the greater Gateway API group if there's anybody who's opposed to this model, or if they have any other model to propose, and discussing it there.
Yeah, just to round that point out quickly, this meeting was before the Gateway API meeting. So in fairness, we could have done this in the other direction, but it's more that this was the one that was next on the calendar. And if it is going to be a working group within the charter of the Kubernetes project, those are sponsored by SIGs. And so there is already, I think, a working group Gateway API under the SIG. And so effectively the decision to form another one, if you would decide that in the end, will filter back to this group anyway. So just floating that here doesn't necessarily, like, we acknowledge obviously that we need to check in with the specific people if they're not on this call today about their thoughts.
Okay, so the result here is take it to the API group and see what Gateway group has to say about it. I don't have a problem with making this a distinct working group, but if the Gateway group would rather keep it in band, I'm okay with that too.
Thank you much.
Thanks.
Sounds good. Ricardo, you had the next 3 items.
Yeah, sorry. So I will split between James, me, and Tim, so you don't need to keep listening me for the next 3 items. So the first one is about Ingress in Nginx. James, do you want to jump in and say a bit about our effort to stabilization, please?
Sure. So as some of you are probably aware, we've had several large CVEs this year, and we've noticed that we need to take some time, just like the Kubernetes project, and do some stabilization and some security work. So we are going to present to the community later today after this discussion that we're going to stop accepting feature requests, putting together a project on our stabilization goals. So we've got some of them outlined in the project, and we just wanted to bring this up to the group. I know we've done it individually, so we just wanted to discuss it with the group as a whole.
We've pasted in the agenda link about the email that we want to send. Probably it's going to be today. We discussed it just before this meeting during Signature Ingress in Nginx project meeting about that, and we've been discussing this since KubeCon, I guess. So if you just can take a look into the document and also provide us some feedback on that, because our goal is actually to have some time to clean up the code and try to stabilize, instead of just keep accepting features.
I think you are not alone in this problem. Like, the project writ large might benefit from the same approach for a little while. You have my thumbs up. I gave you that at KubeCon, but it seems like well within your purvey to hit the pause button.
Okay. I think that's all for the first one. Can I jump to the second one, Casey? Okay, so the second one is like during KubeCon we discussed about starting to work on moving kubeproxy, actually a bit before moving kubeproxy to distroless, James paged me because I did some other stuff on Docker image optimizations, and there are two goals here. So from the SIG infra, the idea is to reduce the image size of Kubernetes of kubeproxy because of costs. But also Rob Scott paged me 2 weeks ago because I think there is some interest inside Google and other companies about doing that because of the amount of CVEs that we have in kubeproxy being based on Debian and so on. So I have pasted the issue on the agenda as well. Then Winship has made a lot of reviews on that, and I appreciate that. So I paged SIG release and other folks just to make sure that we could take the distroless image and make it run in KK. So right now the image that's published, it's running fine. Just the dependency spinning check it's not working, but everything else it's running fine. So I would like to ask you folks what you all expect as a next step, right? Because I've been with not much time to do that and to move forward with that. So right now that image is working. iptables wrapper is on shell script. We didn't move that to Go program yet. Dan is making some review on that, and I need to follow up in that review. But my goal was to merge that with the current iptables wrapper shell script and see how it goes, if it works. And then maybe in a next cycle, we move the iptable shell script to a Go program. But right now, I would like to ask you some help with the follow-up on that with SIG release and SIG testing, and even SIG network taking a look into that, and we moving forward with that maybe before version 125. So SIG infra may have some cost optimizations and so on. So the item it's in the agenda, but I want to hear from you what you expect from me as the next steps on that.
I mean, the number one thing I'm looking for is confidence that it works, that there's not some weirdo corner case. I don't know that I believe our EDEs cover every weirdo corner case of execing all the various tools and so on. So having tried to like remove stuff from other images and then found corner cases later, I'm afraid of this effort, right? Like the need for a shell. Like I found out that half of the Git commands are actually shell scripts. So if you come in with a plan like this is why we think we're confident, then that's what I'm looking for.
I'm not. This is why I just try to run on KK and like, but I agree with you. Like Dan asked me like, hey, have you tested like iptables NFT versus legacy? And I even don't think that we can test that scenario in our end-to-end tests, right? So we don't have a test that like have a, let's say a node, a Debian node versus a new Debian node and saying, hey, this works on both scenarios with IPVS and iptables and whatever. So I can't say that I have full confidence on that. And from my side, I think that would be great to have like iptables wrapper as a Go program as well, just removing all of the shell stuff and other things. But still, we do have like Dan raised something on my PR, which is like, hey, you are just copying the binaries and the libraries, but are we missing some configuration or something like that? And then I keep like changing, okay, I'm just gonna copy everything but the man pages and documentation because it's gonna reduce the size of the image. But still, yeah, we may be missing something on that. Right, so I need some help to try to figure out what's next on that. Like, how can we gain confidence on that? Because like, I just can say, hey, every test passes, but I agree with you. I don't think we cover every single scenario. One other thing that maybe we should do is like to have both images published with SIG release and like a fast path for people to roll back, maybe. Antonio is with the.
Yeah, the scripts work, and the dance script, because are the ones that we use in Kind, and the technique is the one that Benjamin implemented in Kind. So I will work with you to what we need is confidence to have some way of running this for a long time in different scenarios and get confidence. But we definitely have to move to this thing.
I feel
I
reasonably
will work with you.
confident. I feel reasonably confident that kubeproxy does not invoke random binaries that we don't know about, because all the ones that we do know about, we occasionally run into problems where people turned out to not have them installed or had a broken one installed, and so I feel like if there were other ones, we would have noticed.
Yeah, my big concern is like some binary that we know we invoke has some path where in some corner case it execs a shell script to help it do something, and like we have no idea, and we don't ever hit that path normally, and we'll go ahead and remove the shell, and then months later it'll explode on somebody.
Oh, we are not removing shell in this first version. No, but yeah,
Well,
I got it. Like
it'll be
some configuration
transit.
file. Yeah, some configuration file maybe. Whatever.
I don't see contract. Well, anyway, I just pin me after that. I also Ben was involved, so I think that I'll be able to spend some time with you with this.
Okay, we'll do. Probably tomorrow, but we'll do. Yeah. And okay, anything else? So otherwise, I would just jump to the third one or pass to Andrew because his is more important than mine, and I can shift mine to the next one.
Mine's only like 2 seconds. You got it.
Okay, but mine is probably gonna take some time. So the third one, I was discussing yesterday or Tuesday with Tim about network policy status cap. Like he was on his cap flow, approving or denying everything, and the port range got approved, yay. But then we've been discussing about network policy status, and the cap was implemented, but no CNI actually created anything on that. And I just I didn't jump it into Calico code or Entria code to see how I could help them as well, because I didn't got time for that. And my point on that was like, when we did the cap review for that one, I remember, I guess was KZ raised something like, hey, why don't we just do this using validation webhook instead of adding status for like port range or something like that. And I raised it actually that to Tim, like probably we are not gaining track on that cap because each CNI wants to do their own, each network policy provider actually wants to do their own approach on that. And then we started some more philosophical discussion about what should we do next, right? So what should we do actually? Like, should we just accept validation webhook, which is not like everyone's favorite solution, or should we just like say that all of the objects, they have status? So Tim, do you wanna bring some context on that? Because you even told something about SIG architecture and creating some precedence on that.
Yeah, I mean, we have as a situation that's relatively rare in the project, which is an API that is implemented by plugins exclusively, where we've now added an optional feature that users might use and won't work, right? So specifically, if I'm a user and I specify an endpoint and it doesn't work, I'm going to be surprised, right? At least we've designed it so that it'll fail closed, but I'll be surprised and I'll sort of be angry, like, why didn't you tell me, right? And there's really only two ways to do that. It's synchronous or asynchronous. And like, I hate webhooks. I hate asking people to go write webhooks. I think they're really clunky. But it is the thing we have, right? So one path is, if you're a CNI provider or a network policy provider and you go and you don't support endport, well, then you get to go run a webhook that captures all network policies and looks at them to say, do you specify endport? If you do, fail the transaction with an error that says, I don't support endport, right? And that feels like a lot of work. Will policy providers actually do this? I don't know. The other path is to do it asynchronously and let you create the resource, but then provide a status that says, hey, just so you know, I only partially implemented this, or I didn't implement it at all, and here's why. And again, it seems like a bunch of work, like policy providers have to do that work. But they're already watching network policy resources. So they're already getting those events. So they already have the right place. Like adding a status block to their watch loop seems like it would be less work to me, right? Now, what we are seeing is, well, but nobody's taken us up on that. It's beta. We've got a bit of a chicken egg thing. We know that, you know, everybody is busy, right? So nobody is going to do work that isn't really important. And if nobody's using this, then why is it important? So it's not a GA feature. So a lot of customers aren't using the field. So ergo, is it important? And so the question, I guess, comes back to, should we push ahead with the KEP that says, here's the status block, and we encourage policy providers to write this block that says we don't support this field, or, you know, in the future, other fields? Or should we just say, hey, policy providers, you're on your own, and if you want to have happy customers, you probably should install that webhook, even though it's a big clunky pain in the butt? And I don't want to do both. Like, if we don't need an API for it, I'm totally happy to just say no API, right? But I want happy customers. Anybody?
And I'll say from
So-
our side, it's on our radar to implement, but it's pretty low down the priority list. Like, we'd rather spend that time implementing endport, for example, or whatever next comes out. And it doesn't, I mean, there's maybe some value in, say, like Calico 320 doesn't support whatever new field comes out in the new Kubernetes, but then you need to, it doesn't just fit in with the existing code, because you need to use like the raw client to get and learn about fields you don't know about in the Go client you've built in, right? So it's not impossible, but a little bit icky. I don't think that changes webhook versus status for us in terms of implementing.
Well, if it was a webhook, it would be all new code though. And so making it use the generic client would be a little easier to do.
And a webhook can be back run on any old cluster, right? I guess that's your point. It's net new, it's different.
Yeah.
So like one of the reasons why we haven't implemented this in OpenShift is that I just like totally missed that this feature, you know, even happened. So
the endport feature or the status feature?
Status. We implement endport now.
Dan keeps remind me that he implemented the endport. Thanks, Dan.
So, but I feel like the admission controller is a better feature than the status. Although I worry about people trying to install random third-party software that uses some feature that they're, I mean, I guess, yeah, maybe you want it to fail in that case. Yeah, I don't know. But I would worry about it like breaking installs of third-party software that is trying to create network policies.
How would it break? Can you?
Because the admission controller rejects the operator's attempt to create the network policy.
Okay, so you're saying someone's already implemented a webhook and now we're breaking their webhook.
No. I'm saying like we add the webhook and say, oh, you know, if you use endport, then we reject your network policy. And then somebody tries to install an operator that creates a network policy with an endport, and now it won't work. And I guess, I mean, arguably it wouldn't have worked even if we hadn't blocked it. So probably we do want to block it.
It's the age-old question of fail sync or fail async.
Yeah. We've come back to that like so many times in this group. I know when I talked to, I was going to look at implementing this in OpenK, and when I talked to some of the folks over there, the first question they had was, well, does Cube upstream network policy tests now like use that? Like, do the tests not run a test for network policy unless the status says accepted? And I was like, no, that's not what it's for. But I mean, that was the first thing they said. And after I said no, there was a lot less interest. Kind of something to think about. I don't know. I know we've said from the beginning that status shouldn't be used as like to say this policy is enforced, but maybe if we added a toggle in the upstream test to say like, if you want to do this and you're a CNI, like, yeah, we'll look at status before running a test. That might be in.
But this being a strictly optional feature, right? Like we're not going to make it part of conformance, at least not in the foreseeable. And so it's not going to be in the upstream tests, right?
True.
I mean, I guess it could be, it's just in the optional section. So it's not going to
Right.
be a fail either way.
Right. Just a data point I heard from folks
Okay.
who would be implementing it.
So I'm not hearing a strong feeling. And look, my default opinion at this point is if we don't know that we need an API, we shouldn't put the API in. So we should maybe sit on this another cycle and, you know, maybe soft ping some folks from other implementation, see if they have a strong feeling about it, right? Like if people are already implementing webhooks, then this is easy for them to add. If it's a first time adding a webhook, it's kind of a pain in the butt.
And there's no rule that says that somebody couldn't just add a webhook to reject network policies that they don't implement, even though we didn't say that they have to do that. So people could experiment with it and see if it leads to happier customers or. Yeah.
Okay. All right, then let's take the decision at this point. We're not going to push that kept forward. The endport is going GA. So we will get more customer interest in it now that it's GA. It'll hit the release notes. Ricardo, make sure that when you send that PR that you write a nice release note for it. Then we can deal with the aftermath of people starting to use it and it not working. Okay.
I'm on it.
Cool. I think we've got 3 minutes left, and Andrew said his will take 2 minutes. So sounds like a good fit.
Not even. Just two really quick things. We're kind of getting to the end stages of admin network policy API implementation. So this is like a final poke. Dan's given us a +1. So looking for folks who have been involved in the past, maybe even if it was a while ago, to just go and give it a look. There's a couple open questions. I know we've all been busy, but would like to get.
Thanks. I have your Slack ping marked as unread, so I don't lose it. Yeah, the last 2 weeks have been just all KEPs. I've been completely absent from all of my other job responsibilities. So like next week, I'm going to shift my attention back to my day job, and then I'm going to shift back to all the PRs that are open against me.
That is no problem. No problem. Ignore the pings. I know you're busy. I know you're not.
No, keep the pings. The pings are useful because it helps me make sure my queue is current. As things fall off the bottom of my mailbox, they're clearly less important, right?
Yeah, no worries. And then the next thing, really short, the network policy API subgroup meeting is falling on holidays 2 times in a row. We're bi-weekly. The last one was Juneteenth and the next one July 4th. So we're going to have an impromptu meeting this upcoming Monday on June 27th. I believe we're going to be talking about multi-cluster network policy and trying to move that conversation out of here into a smaller group just to start. So please come to that if you're interested. Same time, same meeting link. Just wanted to give a heads up. That's all I have. Thank you guys. Thanks everyone.
Thank you. And that brings us right up to time. Looks like we didn't make the KEP review.
Okay, let me make a plea to anybody who is interested in what the SIG is doing KEP-wise. Go to Kubernetes enhancements, go to issues, look for label SIG network. We have 23 open KEPs. These are the KEPs that are in progress. This doesn't include things that are GA but still have gates in the code base. Some of these are stale and are just going to age out. Some of them are probably done. I don't think, and I didn't find any that are actually done. And some of them could use a little bit of infusion of energy. So do take a look and help us drive them to completion. I'm really anxious about opening more and more and more KEPs when we have 23 open KEPs. And we're not the worst. We're not the worst SIG here, but it is a lot to wrap our head around the intersection of all of these non-GA features. especially around all the kube proxy stuff. So I really would love to see all of those things come to conclusion, because I know that there are more KEPs in the pipeline that people would like to do, not the least of which is like multi-cluster network policy and admin network policy and multi-cluster admin network policy and
Scary world.
Tim, do we need to block a block of time, whether in this meeting or elsewhere, to go through and do some KEP decisions, triage, et cetera?
We should. I should have put it on the agenda, but I saw there were so many things for today that I didn't. And because the KEP freeze was supposed to be last week, we got an extra grace period. I didn't figure it was that urgent for this week, but we really should go through it for next time. So I'll put it on the agenda for next time.
Great. So with that, we will meet again in 2 weeks on July 7th. See you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.